Right. So today, we're really going deep into the world of international influence, foreign policy,
Yeah.
and all the agencies that operate in those spaces. And we got some pretty fascinating sources to unpack. Trust me, things get pretty intriguing. We're talking about, a tech billionaire,
Okay.
as a certain U.S. agency, and some pretty serious allegations
Yeah.
about what's really going on behind the scenes.
Yeah. I think one of the most interesting things about all this is the level of resistance
Oh, yeah?
that's encountered when you try and get information about this. It's almost like we're looking at a deliberate effort
Right.
to kind of obscure the true nature of some of these activities.
Yeah, it's like when, that team was assembled by Donald Trump to investigate potential waste at USAI.
Right.
And they were just basically stonewalled.
Yes.
It makes you wonder what they were so determined to hide,
Yeah. It echoes other instances where intelligence agencies have been reluctant to share information with elected officials. There's a history of this kind of tension,
Okay.
and it does suggest that there might be more to the story than meets the eye.
So we're not just talking about a few bureaucratic hiccups here, right?
Not exactly. I think this resistance hints at something a little deeper.
Okay.
A potential conflict between the stated goals of USI and its actual operations. It's almost like there's a very carefully constructed facade where you have these seemingly humanitarian efforts that actually serve a completely different purpose.
Okay, now you've got my attention. How does that work exactly?
Well, think about it this way. You've got USAID projects, right? So irrigation systems,
Yeah.
famine relief, even support for new constitutions.
Okay.
These can all have a dual purpose.
Yeah.
On the surface, they appear to be about helping people, and very often that is part of the equation.
Right.
But these efforts can also be very strategically deployed to advance U.S. foreign policy interests.
So you're saying that building a well in a rural village might not be just about providing clean water.
It might be part of a broader strategy to gain influence in a particular region, to build alliances, or even to counter the influence of, let's say, other global players.
That's a bit unsettling, to be honest.
Yeah.
Are there any concrete examples of this, like this dual purpose in action?
Oh, absolutely. You could take, for instance, USAID's agricultural support in a strategically important region.
Okay.
Now, this could be seen as both boosting food production, which is a good thing,
Right.
but also subtly strengthening U.S. ties in that area, potentially at the expense of other nations' interests.
Yeah, it's like a soft power play,
Yes.
using aid as a tool to achieve those strategic goals.
Precisely. And this duality raises serious questions about the true nature of USAID's mission, right? And whether its activities always align with its stated humanitarian goals.
Right. And, you mentioned scandals before.
Yes.
What kind of scandals are we talking about with USAID?
Well, there are a number of incidents that have certainly raised eyebrows over the years, some with pretty serious implications. For instance, there are those allegations that connect USA funding to the Wuhan lab.
Right.
There's also their involvement in Afghanistan, with some suggesting links to the heroin trade.
Okay.
And then you have this documented evidence of a plan to use fake Twitter accounts in Cuba to stir up unrest. It's pretty shocking stuff.
Wait, fake Twitter accounts? That sounds like something out of a spy movie.
Yeah, well, it goes beyond just social media manipulation. USAID has also been accused of using public health clinics as fronts for intelligence work.
Right.
With the aim of destabilizing governments that they deem unfavorable.
Wow. That's serious stuff. That reminds me of that incident back in 2011 when the CIA was caught running that fake vaccination program in Pakistan to gather intelligence.
Yeah, that's a perfect example of how these kinds of operations can backfire and cause lasting damage. I mean, the global backlash was significant.
Right.
Eroding trust in legitimate vaccination efforts.
Yeah.
And potentially even putting lives at risk.
Yeah, and it took, 16 months for the CIA to even issue a statement? And even then it was non-binding. They just said, we won't use public health work as a cover for spying anymore.
Right.
I mean, what's to stop USA from doing the exact same thing?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very real concern. And there's evidence to suggest that they might already be doing it. Take the example of those HIV clinics in Cuba, right? That were used as cover for activities aimed at, basically inciting political change.
Yeah.
That's a confirmed example.
Okay, so we're seeing a pattern here. Right?
Yes. Yeah.
But why all the secrecy? If these activities are truly in the national interest, why not just be transparent about them?
Well, you see, transparency can be a very tricky thing, especially when you're dealing with intelligence and foreign policy.
Right.
Revealing the true extent of USA's activities could actually have serious consequences, both domestically and internationally.
What kind of consequences are we talking about here?
Well, for one, think about the potential for diplomatic blowback.
Right.
Imagine the damage to America's global standing if countries around the world kind of suddenly discovered the true nature of USAID's operations. I mean, they might become very wary of partnering with the U.S., fearing that their own interests could be compromised.
Right. And I bet rivals like Russia and China would be all too happy to exploit that situation.
Oh, absolutely.
To their advantage.
They could portray the U.S. as hypocritical,
right,
undermine American influence, and even use it as justification for their own, let's say, questionable actions on the world stage.
It's interesting you mentioned that because, you know, the presidents of El Salvador and Mexico have both been publicly critical of USA, questioning its motives, questioning its influence. It seems like the world might already be catching on to some of these issues, right?
It's not surprising. Actions have consequences. And these kinds of activities, they rarely stay hidden forever.
But there's always that counter argument, isn't there? This idea that if the U.S. pulls back, other actors like China, Russia, or Iran will just step in and exert their own influence.
That's a valid point, and it's a complex issue with no easy answers. Take, for instance, the proposal to fold USAID under the State Department. On the surface, it might seem like a way to increase oversight and control, right?
Right, but would it really change anything?
Well, that's hard to say for sure.
Right.
Some argue that it might just be a case of the State Department inheriting let's call them USAID's issues, for lack of a better term. The same underlying problems could persist just under a different banner.
Yes. Speaking of the State Department, we actually have a clip of Senator Marco Rubio, who is now the acting director of USAID.
Right.
And he's responding to questions about his new role and the agency's future.
Okay.
Let's hear what he has to say.
All right. I mean, it really challenges our assumptions about how these organizations operate and the real motivations behind their actions, you know?
Yeah. It's like we're starting to see the world through a different lens.
Yes.
One that reveals all these hidden machinations of these power dynamics that shape global events.
Exactly.
It makes you question everything you thought you knew about foreign aid and international relations.
Absolutely.
You know, it just makes me think back to that fake vaccination program that the CIA ran in Pakistan.
Right.
It's just such a chilling reminder of how good intentions, or at least the appearance of them, can be twisted to serve a hidden agenda.
And the consequences of that were so far-reaching. I mean, they damaged trust in legitimate vaccination efforts, potentially putting lives at risk, I mean.
Yeah, and it took them, what, like 16 months to even issue a statement?
Yeah, and it was non-binding.
And even then, it was non-binding.
They just said, we're not going to do it again.
Yeah. And now we have USAA potentially engaging in similar activities.
Right.
Using these public health initiatives as a cover for intelligence work.
Potentially, yeah.
It's a disturbing thought.
It is.
To say the least.
It really raises that question of whether the ends justify the means.
Right.
And who gets to decide what those ends are, right?
Exactly. It's like we're just peeling back the layers of a really complex onion here.
Yeah.
And with each layer, the story just gets more intricate and unsettling.
It does.
It makes you question all the narratives that we're often presented with. And the motivations of those in power, you know.
And I think that's the power of a deep dive like this, right? It challenges us to really think critically about the information we consume and to look beyond the surface to try and uncover the underlying power dynamics that are at play.
So let's just recap what we've uncovered so far.
Okay.
We started by looking at USI, right?
Right.
This seemingly benign agency that's focused on humanitarian aid.
Yeah, on the surface.
On the surface.
That's how it appeared.
But as we dug deeper, we found evidence suggesting that their activities might be a little more intertwined with U.S. intelligence and foreign policy goals. We saw how projects, while often appearing to be purely humanitarian, can also serve to advance U.S. interests in these strategic regions around the world.
In a very strategic way.
And we explored some of those controversies surrounding USA, including those allegations linking them to the Wuhan lab, the heroin trade in Afghanistan, and even the use of fake social media accounts to manipulate public opinion.
To control the narrative.
And perhaps most disturbingly, we've seen evidence suggesting that they might be using public health initiatives as a cover for intelligence operations.
Right. Much like that.
Much like the CIA's fake vaccination program.
CIA vaccination program, yeah.
In Pakistan.
Exactly.
I mean, these patterns raise serious concerns.
They do.
About accountability.
Yeah.
Transparency. And just the potential for abuse of power.
Absolutely.
Within these organizations.
It really does.
And it brings us back to that central question, right?
Yeah.
Are there these powerful entities within the U.S. government operating beyond the reach of democratic oversight?
That's the question, isn't it? You know, this story has so many different angles.
It does.
I mean, we've got this tech billionaire, we've got a former president, we've got intelligence agencies, we've got international relations.
Yeah.
We've even got questions about the very nature of humanitarian aid. It's like this giant puzzle where the pieces are slowly starting to fit together.
And it's a puzzle worth solving.
Oh, absolutely.
Because understanding these dynamics is essential.
Yeah.
If we want to have any kind of clear perspective on the forces that are actually shaping our world.
Because it's not just some kind of abstract geopolitical game.
Right.
The decisions made by these agencies, the actions they take, they have real world consequences for people's lives.
Absolutely. And that's why it's just so important.
It is.
To shine a light on these often hidden activities and hold those in power accountable.
Absolutely.
We need to ask tough questions, connect the dots, and form our own opinions based on the evidence.
Because in a world that's just saturated with information, critical thinking is more important than ever.
Absolutely.
We can't just passively absorb what we're told. We have to actively engage with the information, analyze it, and come to our own conclusions.
You know, this deep dive has been really eye-opening.
It has.
It's challenged my assumptions. It's expanded my perspective. And honestly, it's left me feeling a little
fired up.
Fired up, yeah.
That's the power of knowledge, right? It can spark curiosity, ignite passion, and even inspire us to take action.
It's easy to get caught up in the headlines or the latest social media frenzy.
Absolutely.
But taking the time to really delve into a topic like this is incredibly rewarding.
It is.
It's like peeling back the layers of an onion, as you said earlier. And sometimes what we find underneath can be surprising, even unsettling.
Absolutely.
But that's the beauty of learning, isn't it?
It is.
Challenging our assumptions. Expanding our perspectives. And ultimately gaining a deeper understanding of the world around us.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
So where do we go from here? We've kind of laid the groundwork. We've explored the controversies. And we've started to connect some pretty intriguing dots. What are some of the key takeaways that we want our listeners to kind of ponder?
Well, I think one of the most important takeaways here is that things are rarely as simple as they seem, especially when it comes to organizations like USAID. You know, there are often hidden agendas, there are complex motivations. And sometimes there are these unintended consequences that we really need to be aware of.
It's like that old saying, follow the money. If we really want to understand what's going on, we need to look beyond the surface and examine those financial and political interests that are at play.
The real driving forces.
Another key takeaway, I think, is that power, especially unchecked power, can be a very dangerous thing.
It can.
Whether it's the power of intelligence agencies, government officials, or even wealthy individuals.
Absolutely.
We need to be vigilant about holding those in power accountable.
We can't just assume that they're going to do the right thing.
It's easy to feel powerless in the face of these massive institutions.
It is.
But we as individuals still have a voice.
We do.
And we need to use it to demand that transparency, accountability, and ethical conduct.
Absolutely.
From those who wield that power.
And you know what? We can also support those organizations that are working to promote those values. There are watchdog groups out there. There are advocacy groups. There are investigative journalists doing some incredible work to hold power to account.
And we can support them.
Absolutely.
Through donations, through volunteering, or simply by just spreading awareness of their work.
Exactly.
And let's not forget the power of social media, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, we can use these platforms to raise awareness, to share information, and to mobilize others.
It's a tool.
I think it's a tool
that can be used for good or for bad.
Right.
But ultimately, it's up to us to decide how we use it.
It can amplify the voices of those speaking truth to power.
It can.
And it can hold those in power accountable for their actions.
Yeah, it's a powerful tool.
It's a powerful tool.
For activism and advocacy.
Yeah.
And we need to use it wisely.
And remember, it's not just about individual action.
Right.
We can also work together.
Yeah.
Join forces with others who share our concerns and build a collective movement for change.
That's right. There's strength in numbers.
Yeah.
And when we come together, we amplify our voices.
Right.
And we can make a real impact.
Absolutely.
And it's not just about reacting to events as they unfold.
Right.
We can also be proactive, working to create a system that is more just, more ethical, and more accountable.
And let's not forget about the importance of education.
Absolutely.
I mean, we can teach future generations about critical thinking, about civic engagement, and about the importance of holding those in power accountable.
It's about giving them the tools and the knowledge they need to navigate this really complex world and hopefully create a better future.
That's a great point.
It's an ongoing process, right? It takes time. It takes persistence, and it takes a collective effort.
But by working together, we can create a system where power is used responsibly, ethically, and for the benefit of all.
Absolutely. I love that idea.
It's not about despair.
No.
It's not about cynicism.
It's about hope.
It's about hope.
It's about action. And it's about the belief that we can make a difference.
And change doesn't happen overnight.
It doesn't.
It takes time.
It does.
It takes persistence. And it takes a collective effort.
It does.
But it's a fight worth having.
Absolutely.
It's a marathon, not a sprint.
That's right.
But with each step we take, we're moving closer to a world where power is used responsibly.
Yes.
For the benefit of all.
This has been a very thought-provoking discussion.
And it has.
I mean, we've explored all the complexities of USAID. We've uncovered some troubling patterns. And we've discussed some potential solutions.
It's been a wild ride.
It has.
But I think we've gained a deeper understanding of the forces that are shaping our world.
And that's the ultimate goal of these deep dives, isn't it?
It is.
To really empower ourselves with knowledge, with understanding, the ability to think critically.
It's not just about absorbing information.
No.
It's about connecting the dots. Asking those tough questions. And really engaging with these issues in a meaningful way.
We've laid the groundwork. We've explored the controversies. And now it's time to really examine some potential solutions.
Solutions. Okay. I'm intrigued.
I think you'll find this interesting.
Honestly, after all the stuff we've uncovered, it's easy to feel kind of overwhelmed.
It is.
Like, what can we possibly do to address these complex issues?
Well, that's a valid feeling, but I don't want you to despair.
Okay.
There are steps that we can take, both individually and collectively, to promote transparency, accountability, and ethical conduct within these powerful institutions.
All right. I'm ready to hear it.
Good.
Let's dive into those solutions and see if we can find a glimmer of hope in all of this.
A good starting point is recognizing that we, the people, have power.
We have the power to vote, to speak out, and to hold our elected officials accountable. We can use that power to demand change.
So citizen engagement is key.
It is.
But what does that look like in practice? Like, what specific actions can we actually take to make a difference?
Well, for starters, we can stay informed, right? We can educate ourselves about the issues, follow the news, and engage in thoughtful discussions with others.
Knowledge is power, as they say. But it's not enough to just be informed. We have to take that knowledge and turn it into action.
Absolutely. And one way to do that is to contact our elected officials. Let them know that we're paying attention, that we care about these issues, and that we expect them to act accordingly.
That's a great idea.
You know, it's easy to feel like our voices don't matter. But believe me, those phone calls, those emails, those letters,
they can actually have an impact.
And we can also support organizations that are actually working to promote that transparency and accountability.
Absolutely. I mean, there are watchdog groups out there, advocacy groups, investigative journalists doing some incredible work in this area.
And a lot of these organizations rely on donations.
They do.
And volunteers to continue their work.
Absolutely.
So we can put our money where our mouth is.
Exactly.
And support those who are actually fighting for a more just and ethical system.
Couldn't agree more.
And let's not forget about the power of social media.
Oh, social media is huge.
I mean, we can use these platforms
We can.
to raise awareness, to share information, and to mobilize others.
It's a double-edged sword,
It is.
but it can be a very powerful tool for activism and advocacy.
We can amplify those voices
We can.
of those who are speaking truth to power,
Yeah.
and we can hold those in power accountable for their actions.
Absolutely. It's up to us. It's up to us.
Yeah, how we use it.
And remember, it's not just about individual action.
Right.
We can work together.
Yeah.
Join forces with others who share our concerns and build that collective movement for change.
That's right. There's strength in numbers.
There is.
And when we come together, we amplify our voices.
That's right.
And we can make a real impact.
And it's not just about reacting to events as they unfold, right?
No, it's not.
We can be proactive
Yes.
about working to create a system that is more ethical and more accountable.
Absolutely.
Let's not forget about education.
Education is key.
We can teach our children
Yes.
about the importance of critical thinking, civic engagement, and holding those in power accountable.
It's about equipping them with the tools and the knowledge that they need to navigate this complex world
And create a better future.
and hopefully create a better future. It's an ongoing process, right? It is.
It takes time.
Yeah.
It takes persistence, and it takes a collective effort.
Right. But by working together, we can create that system where power is used responsibly, ethically, and for the benefit of all.
I love that vision.
It really is. You're absolutely right. It's a marathon, not a sprint. But you know what really struck me during this whole deep dive?
What's that?
It's just how easy it is to accept the surface level of things.
Yeah.
You know, we see headlines about USAID doing, all this good work around the world.
Right.
And we kind of take it at face value. But then we dig a little deeper and wow, there's a whole other story unfolding,
That's the danger of complacency, isn't it?
It is.
I mean, we become so comfortable with the narratives that we're given, especially when they reinforce our own existing beliefs.
Right.
It takes effort to challenge those narratives, to really look beyond the surface and ask those tough questions.
It does.
But that's where real understanding lies.
And it's not just about USAIDs, right?
No, it's not.
It's about any organization or any institution that wields significant power.
Absolutely.
We need to be vigilant. We need to hold them accountable.
Yeah.
And we need to make sure that their actions are actually aligning with their stated goals.
Transparency is key.
It is.
I mean, if we don't know what's happening behind closed doors,
Right.
how can we be sure that that power is actually being used responsibly and ethically?
It's not even just about uncovering wrongdoing.
Right?
It's also about making sure that resources are being used effectively.
Yes.
That policies are actually serving their intended purpose. And that the voices of those who are affected are actually being heard.
Accountability is crucial.
It is.
Both at the individual and the institutional level. I mean, those who wield power should be held responsible for their actions.
Right.
And there should be mechanisms in place to address any abuses or overreaches of that power.
It's like a system of checks and balances, right?
Exactly.
We need those multiple layers of oversight from independent watchdogs to a robust free press
Absolutely.
to really ensure that those in power are held accountable.
To the people they serve.
The people they serve.
Yeah.
And it's on each of us really to stay informed, to engage in these conversations, and to demand better from those in positions of authority.
We can't just be passive observers.
We can't.
We have to be active participants.
You know, when we started this deep dive, we focused on a tech billionaire, a controversial agency, and some pretty shocking allegations.
We did.
But it's become so much more than that, hasn't it?
It has.
It's become a reflection on the nature of power itself.
Yes.
How it's wielded, how it can be abused, and how we can ensure that it's actually used for good.
It's been quite a journey, hasn't it?
It has.
A journey of exploration and discovery. A journey that requires critical thinking, a willingness to challenge assumptions, and a real commitment to truth and justice.
This has been one of our most thought-provoking deep dives yet.
I think so.
Wouldn't you say?
I would agree.
Subscribe to our podcast, which is available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. We are here to make things clear. What are your takeaways from this deep dive? What questions are still swirling in your mind? Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep pushing for a world where power is used responsibly and for the good of all.